Are you ready to make some sourdough? What's up guys, welcome to my channel and welcome to this video where I'm going to teach you how to make sourdough for beginners. If you're new here, hi, my name is Tatiana and I've been on the sourdough making journey for just about 6 months now. So I'm still a newbie, still a beginner, but I have picked up on a lot of tips and tricks along the way that I want to share with you and meet you wherever you're at in your sourdough making journey. Because I don't know about you, but before I got started, I got super overwhelmed, I overcomplicated it, I even procrastinated, and I realized after making a few loaves that it was actually super simple and enjoyable. And there's so much reward to making bread from scratch in your own home that is delicious that I want everybody to be able to experience. And I think learning from experts are great, but sometimes they may forget what it's like to be a beginner, right? And they may skip a few steps, they may not explain terminology. So let's be beginners together and let's create a video that is super simple that can help you get started or continue your sourdough making journey wherever you're at so you can enjoy the fruit of sourdough. Before we get started, make sure you're following me on Instagram at Tatiana_Kuto. I share all my weekly loaves there, and I'm gonna be sharing more recipes with you on my stories and all the behind the scenes. But let's get started. First things first with this video, I'm gonna share with you all of the equipment and tools that you need. I'll make sure I will link them all below. You can find them on my Amazon storefront, because if you do not have everything, you technically can't fully get started, and it did hold me back from getting started. So let's make sure you have everything. If you have all the tools, you can just skip ahead. And I will preface, this is a 2-day process. You don't have to be in the kitchen for the full 2 days, but it is a 2-day journey, so just make sure you have that time. All right, first things first. We need an active starter. This video will not be teaching you how to create an active starter from scratch because I did not do that. I'll share with you what I did in a moment here and some options you have, but I will be teaching you how to make an alive active starter from discard. So this is discard, aka dormant dough that I have accumulated for the last 6 months. You do not need this much. That has been sitting in the fridge, and so I pull from it every loaf I want to make, and I just make it active and alive again. So I will be sharing that process here with you in case you have discard or dormant dough. If you do have active starter that's been living on the counter that is bubbly and alive and ready to get started, you can skip forward. And if you have no starter at all, what I would recommend doing is I bought it from the woman I learned from, Amanda Hansen, who is Sourdough Sparrow on Instagram and TikTok, and she sells her starter that she named Eden for like $15. It is a 5-step process. It comes with the kit, all the explanation. It's super simple. Let me just tell you, it will save you so much time and headache. I read the reviews, it convinced me, and it's gonna convince you too. So I'll make sure to link that as well. And I do want to share, I did take her course. So she does have a course that goes way more into detail into the sourdough making process. I think it's about $99. I am an affiliate for it, so I will put that below if you are interested in learning more about sourdough making journey. Do you need to have the course to learn how to make sourdough? Absolutely not. You can learn from a cookbook, you can join me in this video and learn everything you need to learn here. But if you do want to dive deeper into the knowledge of sourdough, her course is phenomenal. And I even have her cookbook. This I highly recommend getting. There are so many things that you can do with sourdough loaves. Like I've made a cinnamon sugar, a double chocolate brownie, but then there's so many things that you can make from the discard, like pancakes, cookies, cinnamon rolls, and she literally has so many recipes here. Amazing, highly recommend you follow her. But let's get started. Once you have your whole discard thing, a few other things that you're gonna need. You absolutely need a Dutch oven. This is a non-negotiable to be able to cook your bread. It allows it to have that crispiness but the softness on the inside. So you need a Dutch oven. They can be expensive, but you don't have to buy an expensive option. I got mine off of Amazon, I think $50, $60. It's something you're going to use all the time if you're making sourdough. You can cook other things in it. It's worth the investment. Again, I'll make sure I'll put all the links below. A few other things that I recommend getting are jars. So I got 2 different size jars. I actually got these off of Ikea. I found that they were the cheapest jars. And I got a 34-ounce one, which is what we're gonna be using today to make the dormant into an active live starter. And then I have a 1.9 quart one. This is what I fill up with discard and let it sit in the fridge. So get a few jars. I got 2 of each and it's been really helpful. A few other important things you will need is a few sourdough making toolkit. This actually came as a kit together from Amazon. The link is below. And so there are these bassinets that you will need there is this dough mixer, this scorer, which allows you to like score and decorate the bread right before you put it in the oven, and this scraper that allows you to like scoop it. You'll learn everything in the video what we use it all for. So that comes as a kit, super simple. I highly recommend just getting a kit versus buying it yourselves. You're going to need a bowl. A stainless steel bowl is the type of metal you want to use. You can use a glass bowl, I believe ceramic, possibly, not wood and not any other metals, because it will kind of strip, I think, the hydration of the dough. You're gonna need some brown parchment paper to cook with, and obviously some flour. So I get the King Arthur brand flour, and then I also just bought 2 big bags from Costco in bulk, which has been great. So you can buy that anywhere. The King Arthur, they sell it at Whole Foods, Walmart, Target. You can find it anywhere. You're gonna need some measuring cups, a tea towel, so just like a kitchen rag towel. And then these 2 are optional, but I do highly recommend. This is a made for sourdough or bread cutting that I got on Amazon that changed the game of cutting. I'll share the tips at the end when we get to that step. Highly recommend. And then this is actually something my sister was using for like herbal teas, but I actually used it to scoop the flour to shake on it. It makes it so much easier than having to do it with your hands. You don't need this and you don't need this. They're optional. Again, I'll just link it all below. All right, so that is everything you need to get started. You got it all? Now let's go on to the first actual step into the journey. So our first step is to make this dormant discard into an active alive starter. So if you've had a dormant, so if your discard is in the fridge, you are gonna wanna bring this to room temperature first before we get started. Ooh, she's fluffy because she's ready to be used. I accumulated this in 6 months. You do not need this much. What you're gonna need is about 3/4 to 1 cup of this discard that we're going to pour into this jar. And then we're gonna add a cup of flour and about 1/2 cup to 3/4 cup of water. I'm gonna share with you what it's supposed to look like versus just the measurements, because depending on where you live, it does matter based on humidity and elevation. So something that Amanda did teach me is what is it supposed to look like versus just the measurements that you may hear from me or from other people. But right now, I'm gonna do about a cup of active, a cup of flour, 1/2 cup to 3/4 cups of water, just because I kind of know that's what works for me based on where I live, which is Florida. And yes, this process can be a little messy, and that's okay too. I'll explain why I have rubber bands there in a second. Get as much as we can there. I did a little bit more than a cup because it kind of just came up, so oops. Cup of flour, 1/2 cup. Discard likes more flour than water at this stage, so just something to note. When it comes to water, you want like warm water. Spring water is the best thing. I don't have spring water, but I do have a reverse osmosis machine, so I lightly warm it up over the stove. But spring water is gonna be your best bet. Don't do tap water. There's too many chemicals and heavy metals in there that will ruin your sourdough. So this has worked for me. We're gonna start slow. We're gonna start with like 1/2 cup of water. I'm gonna mix it because it's just easier instead of just rushing or assuming. One other tool I forgot to share is a spoon to mix things up. And so you're just gonna mix it. All right, so right now I did 1/2 cup of water, and she's looking just a little bit dry. She's looking just a little too dry. Can you see that? We're just gonna add a little bit more water. Perfect. So this is what you want it to look like. It's like that really thick pancake mix, so it's not too runny but not too thick. Once you've got it to that, I recommend scraping the sides of the jar so that way you can see it rise. And this is where the rubber band comes in handy. This is where you can put the rubber band on the jar to see where it was and to make sure you're like, did it rise, did it not rise? It gives you that set point. All right, so this is where she's at. We have the rubber band on. We're now gonna let this sit on the counter for a few hours. It can take 4 to 6 hours. Depending where you live, it could take longer. Some people like to do this overnight. You may need to refeed her, but for me, based on knowing where the work I've done, where I live, Should be ready in about 4 to 6 hours. It's currently 8:30 a.m. so we'll check back here in a little bit. All right, my friends, it is a few hours later, about 2 p.m. I've been busy working out, doing some work, and our dough has risen. So you can see this is where it was. She has gone up. She was higher, I will say, and dropped a little bit, but I think she's still going to be good. I could have probably done this like an hour and a half ago, but I lost track of time. So let's take a look. Yeah, she is good. So something you want to look for, you want to see bubbles, and like the bubbles are rising and dropping. So let me see if you can see that with this right here. You see that? And then you can see how it's stringy when you pour it like that. That's also something you want to look for. So did you see that? Trying to see if I can get a bubble to rise and fall for you. She is breathing, aka when there's bubbles, when the bubbles are rising and falling, like aka breathing, that's why I say that, and stringy, we're going to grab our bowl, again, stainless steel or glass is the best, your mixer, and then we're going to need flour and water for this step. So essentially this is where if you have active starter, this is where you're meeting me, because we're going to be putting these ingredients in the bowl to then make our loaf, the beginning stages of our loaf. So everybody's measurements are a little bit different. I have heard about 3/4 to 1 cup of the active starter with 3 cups flour, or 3 2/3 cups flour, to about like 2.5 cups of water. Everyone's different. My notes, I've taken notes, and this is something I highly recommend you doing with each loaf you do. I do about 3/4 to a cup of the active starter to about like 2 cups of water and like 3 1/4 cups of flour. I do start it slow and add in based on like what it needs to look like and the consistency. So again, I will share what that's supposed to look like for you, because your measurements might be a little bit different, and that's totally fine. So let's get this started. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna put the active starter with the water and then mix it up. It's gonna look like this murky water, and then we're gonna add the dough in. Yeah, we want that stringiness. And I just made a mess. It's all good. So I'm gonna do about 1.5 cups of water first. Oh, I just did like 1 3/4. You want it to look like it's literally like murky white water. So that's about 3 cups of flour. See how it's kind of doing it like that? We want to add a little bit more water since I didn't do the full 2 cups. Rest. So a good way to test it out if it's too wet or too dry is getting your hands in it and feeling it out. And again, this is a trial and error. You'll get accustomed to like what it's supposed to look like and feel. I feel like we could add even a little bit more dough. So again, I'm just feeling it with my hands. I would recommend rinsing some water in your hands before mixing this up. It'll help with the stickiness, but that's all good. So that is how you want it to look like. Again, it's not too dry. It's not like drooping of wetness. So when you put your hands in there, that's when you're gonna be able to know, you'll be able to feel it. You'll be able to feel if it's too wet or not. It's not really sticking to this. So that's how you know it's good. So once you mix that up and you feel like you have a good consistency, don't overthink it. Do the best you can. Feel it out with your hands. I feel like your body will tell you. And at the end of the day, this is a growing experience. You're gonna learn more with each loaf that you make. You'll have a good partnership with your dough, and you're gonna learn, does it need more dough? Does it need more water? And there's no failure here, it's just all feedback. So take it slow. But once you feel like you have a decent consistency that looks like mine, again, I don't even know if mine's perfect, but I feel like this is what my other loaves look like, and they taste pretty good. So after that, you're going to wet your tea towel, make it nice and damp, wring it out, and we're going to set this on the counter for 45 minutes, and then we will be back to do our first series of stretch and folds. Now you may be wondering what to do with this excess dough that we have in this new jar. So there's a few things. You can leave this on the counter and keep it alive and active by feeding it flour and water each and every single day and continue to make loaves. Or you can make some recipes with it, like pizza crust, cookies, pancakes, cinnamon rolls. I haven't gotten there fully yet. I'm actually gonna be making pizza crust tonight in my vlog, so make sure you watch the vlog on that. And that's why I recommend getting that cookbook by Amanda Hansen, because it's amazing how many recipes there are to do. Or what you can do is put this in the fridge. It's discard, make it dormant, and then when you're ready to make a new loaf, maybe it's next week, you take it out again, bring it to room temperature, and then you start the process again, which is where we were at in the video. So a few things for me, I'm going to be putting this in the fridge just like this, because next time I use it, I'll probably just feed this instead of taking it from that other jar and go from there. So let's put a 45-minute timer on and we'll see you in a little bit. Yay, we've gotten to our first series of stretch and folds, but before that, let me show you what the dough looks like. Yeah, pretty gooey. And we're going to add 2 teaspoons of salt and 1 tablespoon of water. I will say, the tablespoon of water, I sometimes opt in, opt out, change the measurements of a little less, but depending on how like runny this is. Again, I live in Florida, it's a little bit humid, so I feel like sometimes my dough is a little bit more runny, but I always start with the salt. So we're gonna do 2 teaspoons of salt, sprinkle it out. Don't miss this step. The first loaf I did not put enough salt in, and you needed it. So I like to add a little bit of water, leave it on the side, and as I'm mixing it, then decide. So what we're gonna do first is we're going to mix this all with our hands. You wanna make sure the salt is evenly distributed, and then we're gonna get into our first series of stretch and folds, and I'll show you what that looks like. Tip you wanna do, wet your hands before mixing it. It's going to help make sure the dough does not stick to your hands. All right, so just go in, have fun, mix it up. If you have kids, let them do this part. Just wanna make sure all of the salt is blended well. See, putting water in my hands helps the dough not stick. So now we're gonna do 8 stretch and folds. So you're gonna grab a side, you're gonna stretch, and then fold it over like that. And then you're gonna rotate it 90 degrees. So stretch, fold, stretch, fold, stretch, fold. We're supposed to do 8 of these, I lost count. Let's do 4 more. 1, 2. It will get harder to stretch it as you do the folds. Okay, there you have it. Once you do the first round of stretch and folds, we're gonna put the damp towel back on, have it sit on the counter for another hour, and then we're gonna come back. I like to do about 2 or 3 more rounds after this of stretch and folds every hour on the hour. You can space it out. I would say between maybe like 3 to 6 hours, you wanna get at least like 3 to 4 rounds of stretch and folds, including this one. So put an hour timer on and we'll come back and do another round. All right, it's been an hour. We're gonna do another set of stretch and folds. You'll notice that the dough starts to rise. We even have a little bubble here. You can see that. And so again, wet your hands to help the dough not stick, and we're gonna scoop it and fold. I should have wet my hands a little bit more and dried it off. 2, about like 8 times. Remember, you're gonna stretch, fold, rotate 90 degrees. Fold. And then you'll get the dough like off the sides of the bowl. And totally normal for it to get harder to stretch as you go and fold. All right, another hour timer, and I'll see you back here for another round of stretch and folds. We are back, another hour has gone by, and now we're gonna go do another set of stretch and folds. The dough has risen even more, can you see that? This is a really big bowl, so you can't really see how much it's risen. Usually I make batches of 2 sourdough now, so I really get to see it. But it's like here now, when it was here. So let me wet my hands, and we'll do another set of stretches. So technically, this is our 3rd set of stretches. You could only do 3, I think I'm gonna do one more set after this just because we have the time. It's only, what is it, 6 p.m. right now. So yeah, why not? You can definitely feel the fluffiness of the dough at this point. And I am excited. I love seeing her as she rises. But that was a bad one. One more. Again, it's okay if it's harder to stretch it. All right, so I'm personally just gonna put the towel back over 1 more hour and do one last set of stretch and folds after that. All right, I am in the middle of making sourdough pizza right now, so make sure to subscribe because if this comes out good, I'm gonna share the recipe with you guys because I messed up yesterday's sourdough and so I turned it into pizza crust, so stay tuned. Anyways, we're gonna do one more set of stretch and folds and you can see she's like here now. She's definitely a lot more fluffier than when we started. Let me get you a better angle. Yeah, so she's a lot more fluffier, so we're just gonna do one more set of stretch and folds. Oh, it's so much more fluffier. I love when it gets so stretchy and fluffy. Then you fold it. Make sure to rotate the pan. Was that 8? Let's do one more. Okay, there we go. All right, so once you finish your last set of 8 stretch and folds, we're gonna put this dough overnight with the towel over it into the fridge and we'll see you in the morning. Good morning, it is the next day and we're ready to get into our next step. So you're gonna grab your dough that's been sitting in the fridge with its towel out. It probably has risen a little bit. And then we're going to grab some flour. Let's put my hair up. So this step, we're gonna wanna put flour on the surface you're working on so that way the dough doesn't stick. And we're gonna pour the dough onto it and do a series of like lifting and flipping. Let me show you. Right, what you want to do is you want to scoop both of your hands from the side and you're gonna see how it flips and you're gonna flop it and then you grab it from the opposite side, let it flip, like fold over and flip. This is a little more sticky than usual, but that is okay. Fold and flip. Fold and flip, and you'll be able to like feel the tension here and flip. And so I do this about, I don't know, 8 times. Let it fold and flip, and make sure you're twisting while you're doing that. So it's folding, right? You can see it's becoming more of like a ball. All right, so once you do it about 8 to 10 times, we're going to stretch it out. You're gonna stretch it out like this. This would be the step if you were to add toppings to do it. We're just making straight up flour dough. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold one into like a third like that. The other half into the third. I like to just sprinkle more flour just in case as we go. And then you're gonna pull this a little bit, not too much, and then we're gonna roll it. So you're gonna pull a little and roll. Just to make sure. Pull and roll. Pull and roll. All right, now that it's like a nice little ball, this is where you can use this tool here, or you can also do it with your hands. I'll show you both ways. I'm just gonna flip it here. And so this is where we're going to rotate it and pull towards you. So you see how we're guiding this and we pull. So again, you're gonna start with this closest to you. We're gonna rotate it 180 degrees and then pull it towards you. You don't have to do this. I actually like doing it with my hands, and I recommend the last few times, even if you do use this, to do it with your hands. It's really building that tension. It's making it into that ball form. Put some flour in my hands. So you twist it and pull. Put your hands in. I like to do this about like 12 times. I did not count, so I'm just doing it so you guys can get the gist. And now it's nice and tight. See, so now she's like this nice ball, and we're gonna have her sit here. We're gonna put the towel over it for about 20 to 30 minutes on the counter, and then we'll come do the next step. All right, so it's been about 25 to 30 minutes. What we're gonna do is we're gonna grab one of our bassinets, and we're going to sprinkle flour all over it. You wanna like really fill it out in all areas, that way the dough doesn't stick to this. The way I do it is we're going to flip this, and I just put it right into the bassinet, and then we're gonna do some like little folding. So this is where this tool really comes in handy. We'll just scoop it under and just flop it. Some people flop it first on the countertop and then do some folding. I just find it's easier to just get it right into the bassinet. We're gonna kind of like envelope it. So you're gonna grab each of the corners and just the creases, and we're just gonna, like a little dumpling is what I like to think of it. Like this. We're gonna closer so you see. Just gonna grab the corners, envelope dumpling style, like that. And then we're gonna damp our towel just a little bit more, put it back over the bassinet, and put it in the fridge. So we're gonna let the dough sit in the fridge for at least 2 hours. I have heard that you can have it stay longer, up I think to 72 hours up into the fridge before we cook it, because that is the next step. Typically, I've always just cooked it 2 or 3 hours of it sitting in the fridge, and it's been great. Today's actually gonna be different because we are going out. It is Saturday, and so we're gonna experiment together in live action here, and I'll let you know how many hours I let it sit in the fridge and any thoughts if I notice any differences. And then a few things to note. Sometimes I don't dampen the towel to go over the bassinet when we put it in the fridge, and sometimes I do. People say to dampen it to make sure the dough doesn't dry out when it's in the fridge, depending on how long you leave it in there for. So we will see. I did wet it today because I know it's gonna be in the fridge longer. And another thing I do play around with is sometimes I don't let the dough sit on the counter for that 20 to 30 minutes like we just did, depending on my schedule and what the dough is looking like and what it's telling me. Sometimes I just throw it right into the fridge. So play around with it. This is like an experiment with you as you get to learn and grow as a sourdough maker. Listen to what your dough is telling you and don't freak out. Each new loaf, you get to learn something new. Again, I'm not an expert, but these are just a few things I've played around with when I make loaves each time, and it's worked for me. So we're gonna let the dough sit in the fridge for a couple hours, and I will see you soon. And then we'll get into cooking it. All right, friends, we are in the final stretch right now. It is about 6 p.m. I don't remember when I recorded last, but it's been well over 2 hours. And so for this next and final step, what you're going to need to preheat the oven to 475 degrees and put the Dutch oven in the oven while it's preheating. You're also gonna need some flour, your scorer. If you bought one of these, great, you don't need it, and your brown parchment paper. First things first, you're going to sprinkle flour on the parchment paper so the dough doesn't stick. I just use this now because it's just easy. I'm just gonna sprinkle it. And now you grab your dough and you just flip it. Oh, see, I didn't put enough flour in. No! Oh my goodness, I don't think I've had it that bad. I must have missed a spot. But she's good, she's good. If you need to round her up a little bit more, you can. For me, she's good. And so we want to sprinkle flour all over her. You don't need this tool, you can do it with your hands. I just found this and thought it was a great idea. You can rub it even. Also, your bassinet, like this is gonna get dirty at times. You can just throw this in the washer, it's super easy. All right, you're gonna grab your scorer. And this is the fun part. You gotta decorate it however you want. You can look online, different type of sourdough decorations. But the one thing you do wanna make sure you have is a deep cut. That way it like helps air it out when you cook it. And then you can do fine lines. I typically just do like a deep cross and then I design the outsides. I'm not an artist. You guys can just watch what I do and do what you want when it comes to that. Just make sure you have like one deep cut at least. I have done like your typical, I'm gonna do an X, but I have done one where you do a deeper cut, like a deep round half moon and then decorated it here. But today we're just gonna do a nice deep X. Make sure it's deep, it should like open up. I don't think that was deep enough. There we go. Might need to sharpen my blades or get new ones. And I'm just gonna decorate for fun. Do like this. Like a little feather looking. These I'm not going as deep, it's just more light. I love watching artists cook sourdough because they do some really cool shapes or artwork on sourdough. Here we have it. Once the oven is preheated, all you gotta do is put it in. Just put her in like that. Cover her back up. The tip is to add a sheet on the bottom shelf so that way the sourdough doesn't overburn on like the bottom. All right, so we're gonna cook it in the oven at 475 for 20 minutes with the lid on. Then we're gonna come back, check on it, and I typically lower it to 450, take the lid off, and let it cook there so that way it crisps on the outside, but I'll show you what it looks like in 20 minutes. All right, it's been 20 minutes. Let's check her out. Ooh, yes. She looks great. So now we take the lid off so that it can crisp. We're at the final stretch. We dropped the oven to 450, took the lid off, and we're gonna cook her for an additional 15-ish minutes. So let's take her out of the oven and see how she turned out. Ooh, yes. I love the crispiness. Can you hear that? Ooh, that was hot. So once you take your loaf out of the oven, you wanna let it sit and cool for at least 2 to 3 hours before even thinking about cutting it. But my biggest tip that I have learned along the way is do not cut it the same day that you cooked it. Put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in the fridge, and then the next day you cut it. I'm telling you, it's going to cut so much smoother and so much easier. What I found when I used to cut it after 2 or 3 hours, it was still too squishy, and so it would ruin the pieces, and it was so hard to cut the bottom for some reason. And I tried this, put it in the fridge, take it out, cook and cut it after a night of being in the fridge, and it will seamlessly cut. So I'm gonna put this in the fridge and I will show you how I cut it smoothly and effectively, because it was a game changer once I figured that out. So let it cool for 2 to 3 hours, put it in a Ziploc bag, stick it in the fridge overnight, and I will see you in the morning to share with you all of my cutting hacks. All right, my friends, it is the time we've all been waiting for. If you're still watching, you now get to reap the rewards of all the hard work we have all put in, and we get to cut up our sourdough. So like I said, I store my sourdough in a Ziploc bag in the fridge. Even after I cut it up, I just feel like it helps keep it fresh and it lasts longer. And this is, I'm telling you, the easiest way to cut sourdough. If you attempted cutting it 2 to 3 hours after cooking once it was cooled down, you may have noticed like it being hard because it like squishes down, but when you put it in the fridge, it's not as squishy. And I'm here to give you all the tips and tricks that I have learned. So this has been the easiest way for me to cut. I do have this knife, like I said, it is on Amazon. You don't have to buy it, but I highly recommend it. It is really good. And instead of cutting it like this, I actually have found it be 10 times easier putting it on its side like this and cutting it, because the bottom, at least for my sourdough, has given me a little bit of difficulties of like cutting that final piece, and putting it in the fridge has helped with that, like fully cut it through. But I saw somebody do this, I tried it, it was a game changer. You just put it on its side And so that way you're cutting the bottom like one at a time versus like the whole piece. And there you have our first slice. Oh, look at, you can see all the little bubbles. That is a good piece of sourdough. Let's cut her up. My other tip with cutting would be cut up all the pieces like I'm doing now. I will pre-cut my entire loaf, put it in a Ziploc bag and store it in the fridge. That way each morning I don't have to cut a new slice like I was doing before because I was struggling so much with cutting it, and it's just so much easier. Well, that wraps up our how to cook sourdough for beginners. I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you are sitting, toasting your sourdough, putting some avocado or butter or jam on it, and just enjoying everything you've put into it. Thank you so much for watching. Like I said, you can find all the links to all the tools and equipment I use below and on my Amazon storefront. If you need the active starter or are interested in Amanda Sourdough Sparrow's course or her cookbook that I highly recommend, I will put my affiliate link below, and I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions at all, want to share how yours turned out, any comments, any tips and tricks that you've learned along the way, please put them in the comments. I can always record another video with updates as I continue to learn and grow. And make sure to subscribe as I'll continue to be sharing more recipes as I go along my sourdough journey. But just remember, if yours didn't come out perfect this time, it is okay. This is a learning process. You're gonna get better each time you do a loaf. You're gonna understand how to read your dough more, and it's all about enjoying the journey versus getting to a destination. Thank you guys so much for watching and for being here. I hope you're enjoying your sourdough, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.